Snow graced the field that had been designated for the solstice competition. Mim's heart pounded as she watched Merlin duel with another senior student, both currently in the form of bears. Each mage could take on the form of any living creature, and the duel only ended when one mage bowed to the greater power of the other. Merlin's fur was sable with a single white streak, making it easy to identify him, although Mim would know those fierce blue eyes anywhere. She had won all her duels so far, as had Merlin. Her muscles ached. The students had been paired randomly, progressing through the competition all morning. Mim had bested 10 of her fellow mages, qualifying for the final duel. While Merlin might have no interest in becoming an apprentice to the royal mage, he wielded his magic with cunning and skill far beyond his years. Mim still couldn't believe he'd started formal training only when he arrived at the Lyceum. She didn't want Merlin to lose. Not exactly. Yet she also didn't want to be the one to defeat him. The day before, Mim had refused to let Merlin say the word that would change everything. Could Merlin really love Mim despite her shadow magic? Did he accept her, warts and all? Mim might have refused to say the word, but she knew the truth in her heart. She couldn't deny to herself that she loved Merlin, the Not Prince. A roar split her ears as the beige-furred bear knelt in submission. Merlin had won. Merlin had won, and now the boy she loved was all that stood between Mim and becoming the future royal mage. The king's trumpeter sounded the end of the match. Immediately, Merlin's eyes sought Mim's. She saw apology in them, but also determination. Taliesin stood on a raised dais to the left of King Uther's throne. Uther Pendragon looked to be no more than 30 summers, his shoulders broad and muscled, his entire aspect severe. A jagged scar bisected the olive skin of his forehead, leaving little doubt that he had taken his crown by force. Unease slithered through Mim as she was struck by a sudden knowing that he had failed to pull the sword from the stone. Could it be related to the vision the cauldron had shown her? Would Mim see the true ruler of all Britannia rise in her lifetime? She shook the thoughts away, focusing on the task at hand. Merlin of Dalriada, you have won your place in the final duel, Taliesin pronounced in a grave voice that carried across the field. Searching the crowd, his gaze landed on Mim. Morrigan of Gurnard, he said, step forward to meet Merlin of Dalriada in magical combat. Mim rubbed her sweaty palms against her thighs. There was no time to exchange a single word with Merlin. She felt the king's glare on her face, imagined his disgust at her shadow-stained hair and complexion. She would show why her magical skill would be vital asset to Camelot. As she walked to meet Merlin in the middle of the snow-covered grass, the royal mage seated beside the king rose to her feet. Ninniame was a tall, imposing woman of indeterminate age. Her skin was fair but not deathly pale like Mim's, and her face was wreathed with rubicund plates. Rumor had it her magic was so powerful she could cross to the other side at will. More than anything, Mim wanted to be trained by her. The rules of the final duel remained the same. Each competitor may change his or her shape into any animal known to man with earth magic, declared Ninnemoe. The duel will be considered at an end when one of the competitors admits defeat. In unison, not daring a glance at each other, Merlin and Mim replied, "May my roots be strong and my branches reach for the sun." They bowed before King Uther and the royal mage, then proceeded to put 10 paces between themselves. Booming to all those assembled, the royal mage called out, "By the cauldron! Let the mages' duel begin!" Claps and cheers followed, perforating the air as a metallic taste filled Mim's mouth. She and Merlin stared at each other for the longest moment of her life. She read the distress on his face. No, this was not the moment to hesitate. She loved Merlin, but she couldn't let him win. A glimmering haze silhouetted him where he stood, and then he was replaced by a blackbird taking flight. A blackbird? Was Merlin trying to lose the duel? Mim blew out a harsh breath through her nostrils before joining him in her raven guise. Yes, Mim wanted to win, but she wanted to beat him with her magical prowess. Not because Merlin had thrown the competition. She called her frustration. Merlin glanced back at her briefly, twittering ruefully, circling the days before the king and his retinue watched them intently. This wouldn't do at all. He had to put up some resistance, or the royal mage would doubt Mim had the request skill to be her apprentice. Summoning magic from her core as she practiced so many times, Mim flapped her plum-colored wings and drove Merlin toward the ground. When the blackbird's beak was nearly touching the snow, Mim siphoned a little more magic, her body growing fever-hot as she transformed from a raven into a fox. The blackbird warbled in panic. Mim snapped her vulpine jaw long and sleek. She struck out at Merlin, but he dodged, and the pad of her paw crashed against the snow. A light dusting tickled her purple nose. Mim barked a challenge. She swiped at Merlin again. Suddenly, the bird was no longer a bird, but a menacing lynx. The giant cat had white tips to its pointed obsidian ears. Its eyes flashed like a summer storm. Yes, this was what Mim wanted, a fair fight. Exhilaration coursed through her as she ran straight toward Merlin. The lynx might be bigger, but Mim wanted victory more. With an aggressive yowl, she feinted left and ran behind Merlin, leaping on the lynx's back. Mim nipped at the fur of its neck. The majestic cat roared and threw her off its back. She hit the frozen earth with a thud. Ow! Her shoulder throbbed. The lynx prowled closer. Merlin let out a feline whimper. He was sorry, Mim knew, but she didn't want him to stop fighting. She remained prone, luring him closer, using his concern for her against him. The instant Merlin's muzzle hovered above her, Mim released a ripple of magic and changed shape once more, becoming a wolf, the lynx's natural predator. Mim remembered how Merlin had shapeshifted for the first time when confronted with a wolf, and she wanted to frighten him into action. The lynx was stock still. Baying in the midwinter sky, Mim scrambled onto her hind legs, shaking out her violet coat, and leapt for Merlin's jugular. This time she didn't hold back. Howling, she grazed the cat's neck with her fangs. Merlin tried to shake her off. Mim held on tighter. Her body vibrated with a low, demanding growl. The lynx rolled onto its back, trying to use the momentum to dislodge the wolf's teeth. Admit defeat, Mim beseeched with her growl. His blue eyes widened, and all at once a shudder ripped through Mim. In her mind's eye, she saw them kissing in the clearing. A pink sheen surrounded them. Intensity of feeling overwhelmed her. Love so strong it pained her. Mim's heart seized. The world spun around her, tunneling as if she were falling into the bottom of a very deep well. No. Oh no. Was this what she'd been warned about? Her yowl transformed into a scream, a very high-pitched human scream. Still staring into the lynx's eyes, Mim frantically ran her hands over her face, her mortal face, with desperate panic. The king's trumpeter signaled the end of the match. Merlin stared at Mim, stunned. The black cat's whiskers twitched. Merlin of Dalriada, you are the champion of the solstice competition, proclaimed the royal mage. You may regain your human form. No! The word escaped Mim, plaintive and mangled. She took a stride toward the dais. No, I do not admit defeat. Nanaime regarded her with a mixture of scorn and pity. You may not admit defeat, but your magic does. You lost control. You could not maintain your animal form. That's not true. It wasn't me who lost control, Mim protested. Gasps erupted among the audience when she dared to contradict the royal mage. She glanced in the direction of the lynx, and her gaze snagged on Merlin, a boy once more, expression bleak. Tell them, Merlin, she insisted. He hesitated. Royal Mage Ninaime, I don't know what happened. Mim clutched her jaw. You broke my magic, Merlin. You cheated, she said, her fury boiling over. Ninaime surveyed them dispassionately. Morrigan of Gunard, your tutor Telison, had extolled your talents to me. Therefore, you must be aware that to break the magic of a fellow mage, you must share an incredibly close bond. Tears of humiliation threatened as Mim swallowed hard. Merlin reached for her hand, and she brushed him away. His constellation was the last thing she wanted. But the rules of the duel state that a mage should change his or her own shape, not that of their opponent. Mim shot back, using all her willpower not to let her voice quaver. She's right, said Merlin. I acted on instinct. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was against the rules. The royal mage exchanged a weighted look with Uther Pendragon. The king gave an almost imperceptible shake of the head. You were betrayed by your own emotions, Morrigan of Grunard, not by your fellow mage. Merlin of Dalriada exploited a weakness in your magical defenses. Ninaime went on. A royal mage must prize protection of the realm above all, including her own heart. I am sorry, Morrigan, but you are not yet up to the task. Merlin of Dalriada will be my new apprentice. Mim's eyes burned. She could no longer hold back the tears. She ran from the field of combat as the spectators cheered, Merlin! 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 Taliesin grabbed the sleeve of her dress as she passed the dais. Mim, don't leave. You performed well today. I'm proud of you. She laughed caustically. I followed the Lyceum's rules, and it wasn't enough. I'll never be enough. I'm done trying. You're upset, Taliesin said patiently, as if he were pacifyingly the cauldron. Take a few moments to calm down, and then come congratulate Merlin. I won't congratulate a cheater, not even if he's your favorite, Tudor frowned. You're letting your shadow self control you. Maybe it's about time. It's who I am, after all, she said, and Taliesin winced at her words. Magic or no, we all have shadows inside us, he chimed. It's what we do with them that matters. But Mim was sick of the chief mage's advice. I always knew you were afraid of me. I'm afraid for you, Mim. There's a world of difference. Either way, I'm not your responsibility any longer. I quit. I'm leaving the Lyceum. Mim stormed away from her former teacher and took the sky.